poppin' pussy like pimples. Send my brother like kinfolk. You get spun and it's simple. Ay, 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 ay.
Architectural forms
ancient
of
civilization
ancient builders. It seems apparent
that was discovered
they were
in
created
Antarctica
by the same advanced civilization. However, these temples are in totally different parts of the planet. This Chichen Itza complex is located in Mexico. The Pyramid of Djoser is in Egypt. And the Ko-Kur Sanctuary was discovered in Cambodia. Textbooks will tell you that all these very similar step pyramids were built by different primitive societies independently of one another. But the weirdest thing is that these almost identical structures are separated by hundreds or even thousands of years and a distance of half the world. And if we assume that they were really created by representatives of the same ancient advanced civilization who could easily cross the oceans, that's the development level close to the 20th century. Scientists have found even too many suspicious buildings, the appearance of which they can't fully explain, or don't even try. In the U.S. state of Ohio, there's such a strange human-made hill. It's called the Great Serpent Mound. Experts are still arguing about the age of the complex stretching for 440 meters. The generally accepted version states that the snake-shaped mound was built by representatives of the Fort Ancient culture around the year 1000 CE. Allegedly, there was just no one else who could do it. However, this version hasn't convinced everyone.
So they built a random mound that went across the whole mountain?
Doubted such conclusions and decided to conduct an alternative study. Not far from the Serpent Mound, he came across a whole complex of ancient burials related to the Adena culture, which is 1,500 years older than Fort Ancient. But the most incredible thing is that the Serpent Mound apparently rests on the ridge of an ancient meteorite impact crater.
Wait,
the
what?
tested samples showed that this collision occurred no earlier than 125,000 years ago, leaving behind a powerful magnetic anomaly. Compass needles literally go wild in this area. Surveyors were able to accurately determine the cardinal points on the Serpent Mound only 100 years ago. Well,
so
ancient people did it a couple of thousand years earlier without special equipment. They managed to do even more. The head of the serpent aligns with the summer solstice sunset, and the curves of the mound serve as an astronomical calendar. And according to the conventional version, all this was built by people who could only build huts and sharpen spears for hunting.
So they used
what if
that thing to tell
time? Just occupied the more ancient complex built by someone else much earlier. Especially considering the fact that in another corner of the world, we found traces of an unknown ancient civilization with extraordinary construction skills.
Why is this man flying down from the sky?
Scientists initially paid little attention to the half-ruined Göbekli Tepe temple complex in Turkey. The first study showed that it was built only about 2,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe would have remained interesting only to specialists if they hadn't discovered at least 16 more ancient underground halls during the final excavations. Hence, the total area of the complex could reach about 20 square kilometers, and that's only what we've managed to find. That's almost
so they got
like
all type of underground ruins or underground cities.
The examinations showed that the oldest of the halls date back to the 10th millennium BC. And that's even before the emergence of any modern civilization. Scientists believe that in those times, hunter-gatherers still flourished on Earth. What could make them suddenly unite to build the monumental Göbekli Tepe?
It's crazy how it seems like all of our information on the old societies is just like educated guesses.
Group text that
there's nothing that we like 1,000% know.
Moreover, Giulio
like
Magli,
everything's an educated guess and it's up for stipulation of change.
Discovered that Göbekli Tepe was not
once something else is discovered about how they built.
That's because the middle lines between the central monoliths of the complex coincide with the azimuths of Sirius during the summer solstice. These unknown ancient people knew a lot about not only the technology of construction, but also astronomy. Then what could prevent them from traveling around the world? ancient maps testify in favor of the version of an advanced ancient civilization that was actively exploring the globe. On the map of 1513, we can see Antarctica, but how did it get there if our seafarers discovered the fifth continent only 300 years later? The ancient map has some more mysteries. For example, the coastline of Antarctica, now hidden by the ice, is depicted with remarkable accuracy, as if someone knew what the continent looked like in the distant past. Modern science managed to study such details only in the 60s of the 20th century. But who could possibly beat us by hundreds or even thousands of years? Could it be the builders of a giant pyramid on Antarctica's surface? This is a fragment of a satellite image of the Ellsworth Mountains taken in 2016. Are these the remnants of the Antarctic metropolis of an ancient advanced civilization? The creator of the mysterious map, sailor Piri Reis, claimed that he had copied his sample from a very ancient document from the already destroyed Library of Alexandria. And by the way,
so why the library get destroyed?
Of the Great Pyramids
why do people destroy libraries? Why do they not want people to know their history?
Detailed instructions for the descendants.
It's something that's in the history that they're scared of.
But there's more to come. The outlines of 16th century South America, still poorly studied back then, are also strikingly accurate on the same map. Mountains, rivers, and some lakes are even marked on the continent itself. That is, in ancient times, someone not only saw this piece of land from the sea, but also managed to get deep into the continent.
That's crazy.
However, on the map of Piri Reis, there are inconsistencies even with our current knowledge of the world. On it, South America is connected to Antarctica by a small isthmus. But wait, could it be that tens of thousands of years ago, in the days of an unknown ancient civilization, these continents were really connected? After all, in South America, we've also discovered many pyramids, and we keep finding new ones to this day. Quite recently, researchers scoured the area surrounding a village in southern Bolivia.
I wonder why people build pyramids. Pyramids don't seem like the easiest thing to build and live in.
They discovered a complex network of canals and the remains of several.
It seems like there would be a lot more easier structures that could be built.
They belong to the previously unknown Casarabe culture, 1,000 years older than the Aztecs and Incas. It seems as if someone specifically taught Native Americans complex architectural skills, and then they were adopted by later civilizations.
So who would have taught them? Why they saying someone? What, like some aliens came down here and just taught them?
Pyramids in Antarctica. In their opinion, this is not the result of...
Bro, if they believe that's a pyramid, why we don't go dig it out? So we can know. Dig it out. Because it costs too much money, most likely. It costs too much money and time to get all the equipment and stuff out there.
Specific erosion is in the case of the famous Alpine Matterhorn mountain. But the debunking of only one pyramid does not change the fact that there are many ancient human-made monuments scattered around the world, and they're all suspiciously similar. Now, the ruins of the Gunung Padang Temple on one of the Indonesian islands
what the liking to the pyramid
is impressive. But in ancient times, it was a pyramid. Like the Great Serpent Mound, it also sits within an ancient crater. Scientists believe that the complex should be no older than 9,000 years. However, a recent radiocarbon analysis has shown that Gunung Padang's lower boundary date could push back the estimated date of construction by another 20,000 years.
Everything's just a guess.
That back then, Earth experienced
everything is literally just a guess, bro.
Of the last glacial period. That's why people were clearly not up to creating enormous memorial complexes. But aren't we missing something important? Trying to fit Gunung Padang into our conventional history. The Ice Age is not as scary for an advanced civilization as it is for hunter-gatherers. These people could continue to travel the world, constructing their pyramids. After all, they were found not only in Egypt, but in all corners of the world. This is the Prasat Bakse Cham Krong Temple in Cambodia, and here's the Monte Dakoti Sanctuary in northwest Sardinia, Italy. And
a lot of these pyramids have been
striking similarities. The boulders of the construction in Argolis, Greece are joined so tightly that even a human hair can't squeeze through the joints. And all this is done without any fastening solutions. Near the city of Cusco in Peru,
it's almost like
with
they're melting the
masonry
rocks.
were found. Even though these regions are separated by over 11,000 kilometers and the Atlantic Ocean. Moreover, if we look at pyramid monuments in Egypt, Japan, and even on Easter Island, we'll see the same story. Even the sculptures
I
of
don't know
these
how they got these
complexes
rocks in
have
so tight,
something in common.
like so close together
Compare
without
artifacts from Bolivia, Turkey, Indonesia, and Easter Island, which can't possibly be reached without a well-developed
Nah, I'm the only one that
fleet.
sees that.
Is it
I ain't gonna say
entirely
nothing.
accidental that the ancient
I ain't gonna
Aztecs
say
had a
a thing.
legend
If y'all
about
seen
a
that in
god
the video,
named
yeah,
Quetzalcoatl,
ayo.
who allegedly came from across the
Big
sea in a
ayo.
boat that moved by itself
I don't know
without
what they was doing back in
paddles?
the ancient days.
According to legends, it was Quetzalcoatl who taught people unprecedented skills, including the construction of pyramids. But here comes another strange coincidence.
How is there
This
such an
image of
ancient
superhumans
technology
passing on their
or
knowledge is
something that
found
was
not only
learned
in
that just
Aztec
fell
culture.
off the face of the
The
earth?
ancient inhabitants of Mexico fixed this
Completely.
event into stone by depicting a person granting gifts of divine knowledge. It looks like an ordinary modern
it just
bag,
looks like a
doesn't it?
bag.
But similar
does not
scenes
look
of
like
knowledge
divine
transmission
knowledge.
by ancient sages are found all over the planet. They're discovered in the most hidden parts of Göbekli Tepe, on the walls of the preserved Assyrian temples, and
That's just
even
a
in
bag.
Sumerian arts and crafts. But if we assume that representatives of an ancient
We
civilization
assume. See, that's
could
the problem.
easily
We
cross the
assuming.
oceans and bestow knowledge on primitive people, this would mean that their level of development was close to our 20th centuries. Could such a society disappear almost without a trace? In
Now,
a
that's the
recent
real
article
question.
in Scientific Reports, American scientists announced the results of long-term excavations near the town of Tel El Hammam in Jordan. A 1.5-meter soil layer entirely consisting of burnt organic matter, ash, and bone fragments suddenly turned out to be the site of an ancient space disaster.
What?
Around 1650 BC, this settlement was instantly destroyed by an explosion of a previously unknown meteorite. Scientists scrambled to find at least some mention of such a cataclysm, but they found only biblical legends about the
Well, obviously
destruction
you
of
wouldn't
Sodom
find
and
it.
Gomorrah literally by fire from the sky. So I guess myths are sometimes not really fiction. And although such a disaster wouldn't have been enough to wipe out an entire civilization, there is an ancient legend about a global catastrophe, which may also prove to have some grounds. The myth of the Great Flood can be found not only in the Bible, but also in the tales of the indigenous peoples of America, and even in the legends of Australian Aborigines. The ancient Finns even associated this event
Yeah, you don't
with
never
the
want
end
to
of
see
the
that.
world.
Water coming
If the
over
flood
mountains.
was really so
you
global,
dead.
even an advanced
That's
ancient
dead.
civilization
That's straight
would
death.
be in trouble. And some data indicate that approximately 13 to 15,000 years ago, our Earth experienced the so-called cataclysmic period. It's like all the storms on our planet were raging simultaneously. But what could have
Goodness
caused it?
gracious.
Soil samples of that period contain numerous nanodiamond
Of that
deposits.
period. How do they
These
know
are
the soil is
microscopic
from
crystals
when
that are formed
the
as a
world
result
flooded,
of the powerful
bro?
impacts of comets
This
or
be blowing
asteroids.
me.
But if the flood was
The soil
caused
from
by
that
the
period,
impact,
as if they
there's
have
the
exact
vortex.
dirt that was
Richard
here when the.
Firestone, an analytical
Like,
chemist
what?
at the Lawrence Berkeley
Like, how
National
would you know
Laboratory in
that?
California, found that most nanodiamonds are found in soil samples from North America. But back then, the entire territory of modern Canada was covered with a thick ice crust. And if the comet hit it, the instantaneous melting of a tremendous amount of ice could create a devastating wave and, as a result, cause a global flood. However, it's not a sure fact that it could destroy an entire civilization at once. The few survivors could
Yeah, this is
theoretically
crazy.
settle in different parts of the planet to try to revive the former greatness and, at the same time, transfer fragments of their knowledge to other more primitive civilizations. It's amazing, but judging by the dating, the survivors of the secret apocalypse could be the ones
secret
who
apocalypse.
built Göbekli Tepe. In the meantime, the rest of humanity was hunting and gathering, as they already had the necessary technology and knew how to cooperate well. But if such a monumental building was erected by people exhausted by disasters, what were they really capable of at the peak of their glory? And if they possessed high technology, why didn't we find it? Although we consider ourselves a rather advanced civilization, which certainly left its bright mark on the planet's history, in reality, we can greatly overestimate ourselves. If our civilization disappears right now, in 200 years, there won't be any traces of human-cultivated plants left on the planet. In 10,000 years, cities will almost completely disappear, except for the remaining large stones randomly scattered around the globe. And we've just found something similar. The Bimini Underwater Road near the Bahamas is referred to as the Road to Atlantis. It consists of 700 meters of neatly laid out limestone blocks. The true origin of the structure is still disputed. There's no single plausible explanation among scientists. But where could this enormous road lead? Could it be that in earlier times, before the Great Flood, the ocean level was significantly lower, and the ancient civilization surrounded almost the entire planet with such highways? That doesn't sound crazy at all, given that it would be easy to get to most other continents from Antarctica, which hadn't been covered with ice yet, just like it's indicated on the ancient map. Maybe one day we'll find the ruins of entire metropolises under the ice. But if an unknown ancient civilization was so advanced, there is one problem. If we disappear, the glass and plastic from our buildings and machines will be decomposing for about 15 million years. And after only a few tens of thousands of years, we would have definitely found similar traces of the previous civilization. Or not.
That is
the
true,
source of all our plastic is crude oil. Ancient people could either have failed to find it at all or considered it useless. It's also possible that they managed to predict the harmful effect of synthetic materials on the planet and just abandoned their production. In other words, such a civilization could be completely organic and therefore leave no trace. But the development level is determined not so much by technology as by the structure of society. And if the ancient sages didn't use plastics as we do, they could find alternative ways to organize their civilization.
Like how?
Despite our prejudices, ancient societies might not necessarily be primitive. This conclusion was reached by the American anthropologist David Graeber, who studied various alternative structures of ancient human societies. For example, in the early stages of the development of even our civilization, there could be tribes with a constant cyclical change of roles. Once every few months, slaves became chieftains and vice versa. In doing so, they could change not only personal belongings, but even names. After a while, everything was back to normal. Also, in his book, The Dawn of Everything, he describes the primitive tribes which consisted only of eccentric people who deliberately didn't observe any hierarchies. Perhaps similar, insane principles of social organization helped an unknown ancient civilization to find alternative ways of development and develop much faster, even on the basis of technologies that seem organic and imperceptible to us today. Simply put, the issue may not be that a highly developed ancient civilization is so invisible. It's just that it's very difficult for us to see it with our prejudices. But one day, we may rise above them and find all the missing pieces of the mosaic of an ancient unknown civilization that has only left us hints. However, ancient people might not be all that different from us in some things. The Indian epic Mahabharata describes an explosion as bright as 10,000 suns, after which a huge column of smoke and fire arose, and the birds fell dead to the ground. That sounds suspiciously like a nuclear explosion, doesn't it? I can't even imagine what it could look like. Do you think an advanced ancient civilization really existed?
The question is to be determined.
How you made this shit go? Bitch, I got gas like a sicko. She poppin' pussy like pimples. Send my brother like kinfolk.